Hi, I'm Amber. Um, when people hear my story, they often tell me how difficult my life has been. The truth is, while there was a lot of pain, I never spent much of my life thinking of myself as a victim. Even in the hardest season, God surrounded me with people who loved me, protected me, and carried me even when I couldn't carry myself. Looking back now, I can see that even when I didn't know him, he was always there. My mother left when I was 8 months old, and I was raised by my father and my grandma, who became the greatest source of my stability. My grandmother loved me unconditionally, and we shared a bond that shaped who I am today. She was my safe place. When I was 14 years old, my grandmother passed away, and I didn't know how to process that loss. The foundation that I had built for my life suddenly disappeared, and I began searching for new ways to numb the pain. I rebelled and turned to drugs and alcohol. What started as an escape became a way of life. On July 31st, 2001, I drank an amount of alcohol that should have killed me. That night, I was raped and I was left for dead in a park not far from my home. By the time the paramedics arrived, I had been clinically dead for 5 minutes. Looking back, now I know that God spared my life. At that time, I didn't understand why. Today, I know He still had a purpose for me. I stopped using for a short time, but eventually returned to the same destructive patterns. I struggled with self harm, anorexia, addiction, and overwhelming emotional pain. Yet, even then, God placed people in my path. Friends' parents stepped in when I needed guidance, and they loved me when I couldn't even love myself. Through their support, I was able to graduate high school sober. But unfortunately, that sobriety didn't last either. A few years later, two close friends died, and my world was shattered once again. When my friend Jason died, I was 21 years old, and something inside me broke. I became what I called a functioning alcoholic, but the truth was I was falling apart on the inside. I then became a mother, and my children were my greatest blessings God has ever given me. But even in that season, loss followed me. During my daughter's first summer, one of my other closest friends was killed in a car accident on my birthday. Not long after, I entered an extremely abusive and toxic relationship that would last 13 years. But during that relationship, I had two beautiful sons. For years, I lived in survival mode, and I endured things women shouldn't have to endure. Then one day, a mother's worst nightmare became my reality when the man I was with harmed my daughter. In that moment, I found the strength to protect her. I put him in jail, but the aftermath left me broken. My daughter and I both needed help, and during that process, I lost custody of all three of my children. I lost my apartment, and I spiraled back into drugs and alcohol. I thought I had lost everything, but what I thought was the end of my life was actually the beginning of God rebuilding my life. God led me to the Bridgeport Rescue Mission, and for the first time in my life, I truly surrendered everything to Him. Not just my addiction, not just my circumstances, but everything. The woman who had arrived there was angry, broken, and explosive, distrustful, and exhausted from living in survival mode. I carried decades of trauma, grief, and wounds that I thought would never heal. But God began healing places in my heart I didn't even know needed healing. He taught me forgiveness. He taught me trust. He showed me that my identity was not in trauma, my addiction, my failures, or my losses, but that my identity was in Him. Today, when I look back over my life, I can see God's fingerprints everywhere. He was there in the people He placed around me. He was there when I survived things that should have destroyed me. He was there in every person who encouraged, protected, and prayed for me. Even when I felt abandoned and alone, He never left. Today, I see my children every week. I attend church, I read the Bible, and I am constant I'm in constant relationship with God. I'm actively working towards reunification, and God is restoring what was broken. I also just started an internship training in the training department in the Bridgeport Rescue Mission, learning everything I can so one day I can help others who are struggling with addiction, trauma, and hopelessness. What the enemy meant for evil, God's using for good. My testimony is not about how strong I am, it's about how faithful God is. I'm living proof that God can take addiction and create purpose. He can take trauma and create healing, and He can take brokenness and create restoration. My story is still being written, but today I stand here sober, hopeful, healing, and trusting God with my future. For the first time in my life, I'm not merely surviving, but by the grace of God, I'm truly living.